everybody, my name is Kara Brown. I am an urban fantasy author and a writer for Otherworld Inc., and I'm here today to talk about some events that have happened within the last 7 days that I just wanted to share with the writing community. So, diving into this first thing that I wanted to talk about, the Voxadpocalypse that is going on. For those of you who are not aware, basically the situation is that there was an individual who Mr. Crowder made fun of by using the same terminology that he uses to refer to himself. This active journalist that he was making fun of got their feelings hurt, and they went on a Twitter campaign and got some traction and was able to strong arm YouTube into changing their policies while demonetizing a lot of people. And the reason that they were able to do that is because the way that YouTube changed its policies is that it is vague. It's definitely open for interpretation, in my opinion, about what is and is not allowed, and unfortunately this has caused a lot of channels to be demonetized or be removed. And I think one of the big issues that is unfortunately coming from this is that there are a lot of people who are disgruntled, especially Mr. Crowder, because initially before this happened, one of the things that went on is that the YouTube actually went and did an investigation. They came back and said, we have researched the situation and Mr. Crowder is not in any violations at all. And then they end up demonetizing him afterwards. It's a very interesting and crazy situation. But the thing that makes it really ugly is that this is not the first time somebody from a traditional media, as I said earlier, the person in question, Mr. Maza, is an activist journalist, and I say it in that order because he's just an activist. I wouldn't actually refer to him as a journalist. This is not the first time that traditional journalism has gone after YouTube and its YouTube creators, because unfortunately nobody, trying to think of the nicest way to say this. A lot of people do not credit journalism because journalism is not credible. I can tell you, as somebody who studies in a clinical academic profession, that at my college, actually in the 3 colleges that I've gone to in the last few years, is that everybody, when it comes to having to do citations, that the number one thing that always happens is they say, do not use traditional media. It is not trustworthy, it is not credible, and they make up a lot of things, and it's a lot of hearsay and a lot of yellow journalism, and it's not a credible source. Right? And unfortunately, a lot of people who are independent creators are able to do it better than traditional journalism. And so currently, this entire situation that's going on with the Voxadpocalypse is really traditional media against YouTube creators, and they're really pushing hard. And one of the unfortunate situations that I do want to bring up, it actually has to do with this article right here that was written by New York Times. New York Times did a post in regards to when they were talking about Mr. Caleb here and how he went to YouTube. Now, if you actually read this article, which unfortunately lots of people don't read articles, they look at pictures and they read headlines, the article debunks itself. He says that he fell down the rabbit hole and then he came back to himself, and he didn't, end up going into the far right that, he almost went down into. But my particular issue with the article, outside of it being completely fictitious and in many situations and also contradicting itself, which is kind of why I'm wondering why I even read it in the first place, has to do with Mr. Philip DeFranco, who you see right there in the corner. Mr. Philip DeFranco, full transparency, I'm a fan of Mr. DeFranco. I really like him. I like his content. He is a YouTube commentator. He will do anything from public situations that are occurring around the world to national to talking about weird stuff that's going on YouTube. I actually really like him, and he's always been very unbiased. However, in being part of this article that you were seeing, there is now the insinuation that he's part of the far right. And for those of you who don't understand, this is basically a smear campaign. They're dragging him in there into this mess, and there are already talks on Wikipedia about basically changing the wording on Wikipedia, saying that Mr. Philip DeFranco is associated with the alt-right, and then at this point they will say he is part of the alt-right, when in fact he's not. And the reason that journalism can get away with this, or get away with it, is basically what they do is, instead of actually citing credible resource and doing research, is what they do is they quote each other. As stated in New York Times, Mr. Philip DeFranco has been associated, and this isn't new. This has been going on for a really long time. And this is just one situation in which traditional media is going after YouTube creators, and they're going about it in a very nasty way. Now, of course, the author of this article turned around and said, it's like, well, I'm just using clips from this person's browsing history. I can tell you for a fact, based on a lot of these faces I'm seeing, that they are not using all the clips. There are definitely some things that should be on here that are not, and so they're picking and choosing, and that is wrong. Now, Mr. Philip DeFranco did actually reach out to New York Times and said, WTF, what are you doing? What is this? And they're not really responding, and there's not really accountability. Now, what makes this worse This is on the website. They printed this story. They printed the story with pretty much the same imagery. They took a few out, but Mr. Philip DeFranco is on that one too. So journalism at its best. And the big reason that I am honestly worried about this is because we have, as an author, I'm always worried about the way that people bend to society, if that makes any sense. We could probably look at the YA community in regards to what I'm trying to say, in that when YA Twitter mob catches wind of something that they don't like, they don't bother to research it, they don't check the context, they don't do anything, they just get really upset and they basically bully whoever it is that they're going after to either make them comply or to tell them to shut up. And that's exactly what the traditional media is doing in this situation with some of these content creators. Now, again, going back to what my worry about this is, how long until, in my opinion, they come for us and basically say, because you don't write the right kind of books that we want you to write, you don't get to have a voice on this platform. How long will it be until they basically will come out and say, it's like, well, you know, I'm going to associate you with this, and I'm going to tell everybody that you're associated with you, or associate you with this concept, but I'm not actually going to check and make sure. I'm just going to spread hearsay. And when in an age when an author reputation is just as important as the written quality of their work, this is very scary. This is very scary, and it's a little terrifying for me at the same time. Oh man. I don't know what's going to come out of this. I know for a fact that in the research that I have done so far, let's see if I can get to come up. Mr. Crowder has basically said he is not leaving YouTube. He's going to fight the battle here on YouTube, and he is also encouraging other creators to continue to fight this battle here on YouTube, because I don't know if a lot of you know, Mr. Crowder was actually asked by YouTube to come and put his content onto their website. So for them to come and ask him to come make the content and then to treat him this way, very interesting indeed. Not to mention that Mr. Mazza is a very interesting person as well. I don't know if any of you are aware, but he definitely does incite violence onto others. Last week I talked about a tweet in which he was encouraging people to do milkshakes. I later found out that shortly after he made that tweet, people did throw milkshakes, and then in the situation that came after that, they started to violently assault somebody. So it's very interesting that Mr. Mazza is requiring that all YouTube creators and YouTube be accountable for their actions, yet Mr. Mazza is not being held accountable for inciting violence and assault and battery onto other people. I really hope something comes of that, but again, not my place, not my circus, not my monkeys. Oh, I really hope that what's going on with Mr. DeFranco gets settled, because again, I'm a fan. I don't think he deserves that at all. And my sound cut off, but that's fine, because we'll just do this over again. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about was another article that was written by What's New in Publishing, in which they were talking about how over 70% of publishers consider Facebook to be the #1 platform for traffic. So they sent this survey out, and the data that you see is kind of what I want to talk about, in which the publishers are saying that they are able to get a lot of business and a lot of traction and a lot of attention from Facebook. Now, this seemed a little strange to me, because in a previous article that I cited last week, they said that they were able to get a lot of revenue from YouTube. But if you take a look down here, YouTube is down here on the 16%, which I thought, if you're able to make a lot of money on YouTube, would that not also correspond with the fact that you were getting a lot of traffic? Now, this might be because of the ads that YouTube runs on its site, but last week's data and this week's data, the difference in it is a very interesting observation I wanted to share with you. Another thing that I wanted to share is kind of at the bottom of the document, where they got a quote from New York Times CEO. So they got a quote here. And the reason I wanted to point that out to you, wonderful viewer, is because one of the things that happens with Facebook and Instagram and all that is that if you want to get traction, you have to do paid ads. Now, I don't know about you, I don't have a lot of money for paid ads. I only made $90 this year. I'm not going to be spending that into ads. But New York Times definitely does have money to do these ad campaigns that they're doing. And for those of you who are not aware, basically in order for an ad to be something that a viewer is going to click on, they have to see it at least 7 times. You have to pay for each of those 7 times that by how many people that you want to talk. It's a lot of money. And I can tell you for a fact that a publisher I was talking to, because I advised them against doing the paid ads because they were a startup, and they got back to me and said, it's like, yeah, at this point we're not making any money on this, because all the money that we're putting into this is not generating anything back. So And another thing that I would like to go ahead and cite is a lot of marketing research and a lot of marketing findings that Rachel Aaron, who is the author of the Eli Monpress series, she was traditional, went independent, and she shared a lot of really good information. I'm going to put a link down to it below so that way you guys can read it. But one of the things that she mentioned in her information that she shared is that doing paid advertisement was not beneficial very much unless it was some kind of discount on a box set. Outside of that, it was just kind of a money sink. And the fact that Facebook, in order for you to get traction on Facebook, if you are not doing the share thing, you do have to do advertisements for it. And I just thought that was really interesting, and I wanted to share that with you. Now, let me stop this because my sound's going to cut out again. Alright, the last article that I wanted to talk about, I actually saw on a video that was done by Tim Pool, and the reason I wanted to talk about it is because this is kind of tying into the whole people are responding without fact-checking or confirming, and basically the impact that it's having not just on individuals, but it's having on businesses. And it's this situation has some justice in it, which I do appreciate, but the fact that it even happened in the first place is mind-boggling for me. So as you can read here, Ohio Bakery wins $11 million lawsuit against Oberlin College. I'm not going to read the whole article to you, but basically what happened is that in a situation that happened several years ago, 3 black students who were part of Oberlin College came in and attempted to shoplift from the bakery. Now, I'm not sure about what part of the world that you are in, but in my part of America that I live in, any attempt to shoplift is referred to as theft. Theft is a crime, and theft should be prosecuted accordingly. It doesn't really matter the who, what, when, where. If you did it, then you did it, right? But what happened is because these students were black, the information got back to the school lost its mind, and even the administration got on board with this, and they ended up boycotting the bakery and causing protests. And unfortunately, one of the sad things that happened is, they lost employees because they couldn't pay them anymore because they weren't getting any more business. Now, thankfully, they did take this to court, and they did win, because after the jury went and researched it, they did find out that the school had literally the whole reason that the school decided to do what it did, obviously the justification for it was really poor. Like, it's so bad I don't even want to say it. But obviously the bakery won the lawsuit, which I'm really happy about, and I really wish that this situation would occur more, because when you spread misinformation like certain other places, I think that needs to be held accountable for it. Like this whole thing, and journalism can get away with it because they'll say it's an opinion piece, but I don't really think people really seem to understand the implication of what their opinion does, and how the influence that you have on other people, it does have a ripple effect. And that's pretty much what we saw here on another level. In the YA community, recently when we saw with Blood Heir, some people spoke out against that book and they boycotted it, and it was a really ugly situation. Thankfully, that woman is still going to publish her book. I'm really happy about this. It's coming out soon. I'm going to put a link down to that below too. But the one thing that I really want to drive home in this week's reports of the newscast is that when you decide that you are going to make an opinion or you're going to make a judgment on something, please make sure that you have all the facts. Please make sure that you look into the situation, that you don't just base it off of a single comment that somebody said. Frequently, something that I see in the YA community, and not to pick on you guys, but is that they will take like a single quote from a book and they will post it, and they'll take that quote out of context. And unfortunately, something that's going on right now is that it's okay to take something out of context and base judgment on it. And the big thing that I really want to pass on to you guys is to please just make sure that when you decide that you are going to make up your mind about something, that you at least have all the facts, or be open to discussing it or hearing somebody with a different point of view. In fact, if I covered any of these articles and you have a different point of view to what I have demonstrated to you, please feel free to leave a comment. I would love to talk about it with you. But yeah, I'm really happy for the bakery. I don't think that they deserve that, in my opinion. And I really hope that the situation that is going on with Vox and Crowder gets resolved soon. Now, the other thing that I'm seeing is that there are people who are basically having their channels completely removed, and I do hear that some of them are going to BitChute right now. And if you can stay on YouTube, please try and stay on YouTube. This is where the fight is, and this is where we need to stay for it. So that is all I got for you guys today. Sorry it's not a happier thing. Maybe next week I'll talk about like puppies saving the world or something. But anyway, that's me for today. I will see you guys on Friday.